Hello, MCU fans. Today we're going to take a quick look at the question of why is the Thor the Dark World placement in the Disney Plus timeline so controversial? And why exactly did Disney Plus place it the way they did? You know, it's interesting. I've done several timeline videos, and one of the more consistent comments has been that people have lost faith in the Disney Plus timeline, but they trace it back to Thor the Dark World's placement. And that fascinates me because obviously Phase 4 has many areas of debate, and places where people disagree with the timeline. But to look at Thor the Dark World's placement as really what broke the camel's back for folks, that's really interesting to me. So let's dive right into why it is such a controversial placement and why exactly Disney Plus did what they did. So first, to discuss it, we need to talk about Iron Man 3. And so let's quickly determine when Iron Man 3 happens, and then we'll move on to Thor the Dark World. So the flashback at the beginning of Iron Man 3 is to New Year's of 1999. New Year's Eve. Then in the movie, there are several times that people refer to that having happened 13 years ago. Aldridge Killian, for example, talking to Pepper Potts, mentions it, and a few other places as well. So that would mean 13 years from 1999, so we're talking the end of 2012. Then several elements of the movie indicate a Christmas time frame, the Christmas decorations there in one of the battle scenes. So we're now looking at December of 2012. So the majority of the movie, the final fight scene, etc., all happen in December of 2012. Then we look at Thor the Dark World. Now, that one's interesting because it picks up right after Avengers. Avengers takes place in May of 2012. And at the end of Avengers, we see Thor putting Loki in chains and taking him up to Asgard. And sure enough, right at the beginning of Thor the Dark World, we see Loki being drugged before Odin for his punishment. So the beginning of the movie is in May of 2012. However, the majority of the movie is about a year and a half later. In fact, we get a specific date if we look closely at the paperwork when Eric Selvig is released from the police for his streaking incident, and that date is November 14th of 2013. So that indicates the majority of the movie happens in November of 2013. And also Jane and Darcy, when they're discussing how long it's been since they've seen Thor, mention it's been 2 years, which works well because the first Thor, where they would have last seen him, is in June of 2011. So thus, the majority of the movie, Loki's time in prison there and the battles and the fights all occur in November of 2013. So we also get additional confirmation on this order of events if you look at Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And I know that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is questionable now and whether it's canon or not, all kinds of debates around that, and I did make a separate video on it. But at least when it came out, the intent was that it was canon. So if you look at the fact that episode 1, which came out after Iron Man 3, it has a reference to the Extremis, which was in Iron Man 3, and it was part of the Centipede Project. And then episode 8 happens right after Thor the Dark World, and they're actually cleaning up after the mess that movie left after the battle, and they even find some Asgardian relics that they have to deal with. So, if you look at Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. As being, at least at the time, intended to be canon, it indicates for sure that Iron Man 3 happens before Thor the Dark World, which we saw. So that all makes sense, right? Everything would indicate the order would be Iron Man 3 and then Thor the Dark World. So Disney Plus put in Thor the Dark World and then Iron Man 3, thus creating a lot of controversy. I mean, especially if you're an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. fan, you're like, well, that doesn't make any sense because you've now just basically messed up the episode order for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But also just from a logic standpoint, it would seem you would put Iron Man 3 before Thor the Dark World. Well, the only reason I can come up with for why Disney Plus did it is they had a tough situation here. Thor basically starts in 2012 and ends in 2013, whereas Iron Man entirely happens, other than the flashback, in 2012. So the entirety of Iron Man 3 happens in Thor the Dark World's runtime. What do you do with that then? Do you put Thor the Dark World where the movie starts or where the movie ends? I mean, I think based on a lot of people's comments, the answer is where it ends and that it should have been after Iron Man 3. But at least I wanted people to see that's why Disney Plus did it, is they looked at when it began, the May 2012. And even from a viewing order, it kind of makes sense to watch Avengers and then immediately see Loki going up to Asgard. So I'm not necessarily defending the decision. I probably would have switched it just to not have people get, so upset about it. And again, I understand why people are upset about it. But this is what Disney Plus did. So I guess what I'd throw out is there may be good reasons to not trust the Disney Plus timeline if you don't like how Phase 4 was laid out. I'm just trying to say, don't let this be the reason. Don't let Thor: The Dark World be the reason to distrust the Disney Plus timeline. It wasn't an accident. They did it with intent. It just might not have been the simplest way to do it, and in fact was certainly more controversial than flipping these two. So I don't know. I hope this helps. Maybe there's some folks that were upset about it, and now they understand at least why it happened. They're still upset, but they understand. So anyway, if you like this video, that'd be great. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. And leave me your comments. Tell me whether you think this is a big issue or not, or whether Phase 4 is really why you're upset with the timeline. And there's more videos you can watch. And in the meantime, please continue to enjoy the ever-expanding, ever-growing Marvel Cinematic Universe.